Okay,
Okay, I want to call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. on Monday, June 28th at the town hall. Welcome everybody who is here to attend this special. I need a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, before I start the meeting, I'd like to just say a few things so that we can deal with this situation hopefully in a great manner. To the board, I sent out a notice, an email over the weekend to postpone this meeting till on July 6th, because I felt that we were not ready to do this. And the reason is that I have completed an application, and the old and the new application are very similar. But on the application, where they have to name the first coordinator and the second coordinator, they're blank. I have no idea who the first coordinator is or who the second coordinator is. Also on the application, it also asks a list of community groups and organizations that will participate in the study, such as the legislative body, planning commission, zoning ordinance authorities, health officer, sewage officer, and other governmental and non-governmental institutions. Not filled out. The second is the list individuals from the community with their affiliations who will actively work on this study, join the wastewater committee. And then on C, there's another paragraph that says identify the individuals who will coordinate local activities and public outreach for the community during the feasibility study. And again, they asked who was the first coordinator, who was the second coordinator. And I also have a memo from Mark Johnson, and it says here, I believe that the legislative body needs to review the actual application, for example, the committee advised application if it passed. Well, you have to review something right. So I don't see how we can do this, quite frankly. I just don't understand. The application is fine. I don't know, it's not the select board's responsibility to do all this. We're the legislative body, we review it. But it was never filled out. So to me, I don't know how we proceed.
Mr. Chair, you're concerned that we're staring at a blank application.
That is correct. And
In preparation for this meeting, Erin did draft an application for us, and she sent it along as an attachment today. And I do have a proposed filled out application, including section 3, and I've made copies of it for all of the select board members. So, and this is only a proposal, and I think will meet the need that you describe of having something built into.
in all fairness, then how come the rest of the board doesn't have this application to look at?
Because of the water commission plan to.
Yeah, I know, but the procedure is you give it to the town administrator and he pulls it off to the board, so we have it in advance. That is the procedure, sorry.
So are you saying that it's not possible to use this draft, even though we have all of the subject matter experts gathered here tonight to ask our question, and that the purpose of this meeting is stated in the agenda is to discuss and act to approve the application?
I didn't say we couldn't approve it, I just said, I spent considerable time with Bill, filling out our application as we are supposed to do. But when you look at the thing is blank, because there was no guidance clearly to the select board or to the town administrator. And all of a sudden, out of focus comes something that somebody filled out that we're just seeing now at 5 o'clock. That's all I'm saying.
Bill, if I may just finish making a thought. It was our understanding that the purpose of tonight's meeting was to discuss and act on the application. And so my question is, did the town administrator or you get in touch with Matt about this? Because Matt would have been aware, Aaron has prepared this draft for us. And I think it would be productive, especially considering the due date that is important for us to meet on July 1st. With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, to go ahead and use this draft of the application as a model for what the select board might adopt. I hate for us to just cancel the meeting now and waste all of the time and energy and sweat that we have right now. And I'm happy to make a motion to that effect if you'd like to see the pleasure of the select board.
No?
I worked 4 hours overtime on Saturday on this because I had no direction from anyone on what to do. I was given a blank form by Matt Ciano and told, this is the application. That was the only thing. And the application actually came from Mark Johnson. And as you know, the application was completely wrong, had a different law that didn't even apply to this. That had to be corrected. When I got it back, it's still blank. I had no idea what's in it. You have to fill out certain things. And without looking at this, I don't know what Aaron put down for what was going to be done, or the reason it needed to be done.
Mr. Chair, if it's not an administrator extended energy that he regrets doing now, it feels it was a waste of time. I regret that too.
No, that isn't the point. The point is we have an application in front of us. This should have been done, actually, as I said before, this should have been done months ago, not 5 days ago. And we wouldn't have any argument over the emergency meeting, Mr. Chair. But now this is coming on us now. Are you going to go over word by word what it says here? Because I don't know that any of the purposes or the reasons for it are the reasons that you guys want to adopt. You might want to adopt them. I put the reasons that were in actual fact, which are that we don't have a problem in the village whatsoever, except that there is a danger that in the future we might have a problem in the village, and that we would like to, there is a business in town which would like to expand, and might be others who would like to come into the village if we could expand the sewer system. That is the reason for this. If there's another reason stated, you guys have to see if you want to adopt that. I've sent you what was in the application so you guys could approve or not approve it. Okay. But I don't know what this says. And then, so I think if you want to go over this, over what I wrote, and then see if this meets yours, then you need to spend the time now. If you're going to do it tonight, do it now and do it, or do it on Monday. There is no reason you have to do anything tonight. No reason whatsoever. As it turned out, we were told, and the reason we had an emergency meeting is because this needed to be done by April 1st, both the contract and this, and it has never, ever been. This has never, ever been done. This has never been done. It was not, I'm sorry, this was not the case at all, though we were told that was the case. And then we were told, I was told, I had to do all this paperwork. So yeah, I spent a lot of time on it, Suzanne. I'm not looking for an apology on the time. I'm looking for apology for why the commission under your leadership didn't do this months ago. That's the point.
So, I'm willing to take your criticism and your, and I'm sure that I'll need to run it. Plus, the fact is, I, aside, the performance of the Water Commission itself, this team has been working on this project since August of 2019. It has conducted water quality tests, wastewater survey, and has brought us to this point. My understanding that at the emergency meeting we had, where we could not conduct the meeting because we had two overriding questions with no subject matter experts to answer them. One had to do with the urgency of the July 1st date. The second had to do with the $43,600 cost of the contract and whether that had to be signed before and submitted along with the application. Now, we are prepared as a commission, and I'm not on the commission, I'm just saying this as a select board member because I think this is why we're sitting here tonight. We now have some way to address the two questions that came out of the emergency meeting, which is why we agreed to have this meeting. And in addition to that, we have a model of the application that the select board would consider as the one we would submit to the state board. I suggest that let's not spend time talking about whether we should do this. Let's just do it. And let's just move forward and give ourselves the opportunity to meet the July 1st deadline simply for the application for the funding.
It's again, I think, and I don't even apologize, but I spent well over an hour and a half with Bill on Saturday, going over the application, trying to prepare for this meeting, and I also spent well over an hour and a half this afternoon, going over this application and trying to put the list together. And, to be quite honest, for me, as a select board member, to get this thing at 5 o'clock, is unacceptable, because I haven't had a chance to really review it. And, I'm not saying that these people, or the list is incorrect, but that's not the way we do things here on the board. Usually we get things ahead of time, that's why we send everything out, so that the other members of the board can study and ask questions. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm gonna just, do you actually talk to all these people? I see GIA is on here. Oh, okay, are you willing to serve, Mr. GIA?
I certainly have an opinion, I'm not sure.
No.
It's not a matter of concern.
No,
Of listing the community organizations
It
that
will
are
participate. It will participate.
that are interested in.
So GIA is here.
Mr. Chair, let me go through this piecemeal. Why don't we just make a decision as a select board? We have Lynette here, we have Aaron here, we have Mark Johnson here. Can we please put this to a vote and see if we should proceed to answer the two major questions? Maybe we could hear from other select board members. Should we use this time productively to go over the two main questions about the importance of the July 1st deadline and the requirements for the applicant? So we just go ahead and do that tonight. I don't know what the other select board members think about that.
Well, I have no problem discussing it, but on age here, I consider Village Park.
We can definitely.
I
If we, first of all, no one called Bill nor you called me this weekend. Did you call Matt this weekend for and knowledge about this topic?
Well, that isn't, with all due respect, that isn't the point. The point is, you have people on here that you never asked. Did you get asked, Don? Did GIA ask? No, and so that's why I couldn't this is why, pardon me. That is why when I looked at this, I could not fill it out. I have tried in my 3 years here to get people to do things in this town. You put people's name down here, then I know probably aren't going to react to this very well. No, because so we're going to sign an application. No, you want us to sign an application where none of the facts are true because you don't really know. You didn't ask anybody.
Let me just back up again. As I said earlier, this is a draft, this is a model, it is subject to change, it is subject to your approval.
After you sign it? After you sign it, it's subject to change?
I,
Okay. I understand it might be a model in the draft, but once we approve this tonight, it's not a model in the draft, it's a fact.
we don't have to approve it tonight.
So then why do we have a special meeting? Why would
Because the due date that we're trying to achieve in order, big picture, to get the funding for this project is by July 1st. To our advantage, we put it this way, higher probability, lower risk opportunity for obtaining funding only for the engineering planning advanced study. This is submitted by July 1, and we have Lynette here to talk about it. If, and answer all of your questions, if we could get that.
I'm gonna make a copy of their application.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes.
could just say, let's see if we have everyone in the room or on the meeting. A lot of this is just a fact sheet. It's naming community groups that might participate or might want to participate. You and Bill might have come up with others that aren't showing up here that we would want to add, or some that you know of that don't want to be on this list, and you can take them off. We have people here to ask questions of. We have GIA here to see if in fact they do want to participate or they don't. We have everybody in the room. It seems a shame to go home right now and have questions. And all the people here to answer our questions.
But Sue Ellen, it says here, list the individuals in the community with their affiliates who will actively work on this site. So if somebody's going to actively work on it, they have to be known, they have to agree, and they have to be able to participate. And it's saying the same here, it's on A.
Well, next Gonzalez is in this round.
Yeah, well,
You and I are here.
Yeah, but I'm not willing to do it.
But, Mr. Chair, we can agree that we need to hear from other members. We understand your position very clearly, and I think we understand that.
You know,
Let us hear from Ed, John, and Pat, what they think we ought to do, whether we should continue tonight or whether we should stop.
I think we should start with having a motion so that we continue on with the meeting doc, and then we go from there.
I thought this meeting was to gather the information, which we discussed at our last meeting, last week, to have the experts here, ask those questions or more, to weed out all the confusion, and to hear these folks, so that it's enough. You know, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but it seems to me that this discussion, the way it's going, has been happening. And I don't want to get from here to discuss, the select board that will put out in, regardless, that's our job. And I'd like to see it, that we have the folks, here, we have some questions in the meeting, fill this out, the draft. There's two here, let's look at it, we're here to do some listening.
And move, we continue with the meeting tonight and gather the facts and consider the facts.
wait a second.
Second.
Okay, so a motion made by Sue Roach and a second made by Sue Allen. Now we can have discussion.
Can I have the motion restated, please?
And move that we continue forward with the special meeting to gather the facts from this, from the assembled subject matter experts and the members of the public here. And we consider the draft of the application.
And not to complete the application? The motion is not to complete the application?
Consider the application, the draft of the application.
I didn't hear in your motion that you were going to work, you were going to go look at the thing, but I didn't hear you were going to write the application.
May I go ahead and restate?
It's up to you.
The motion that I'm making is that we go forward with tonight's meeting for the purpose of gathering facts with the people, subject matter experts who are assembled here with us, and our members of the public who are also here.
For the purpose
And
of what?
we consider the draft application.
Are you saying we should sign this tonight? Is that what you're saying?
I am not. My motion says we should consider the draft application.
Okay. Do we have any discussion?
I didn't hear a second.
Would you like to say something at all?
See my name's on the list as a potential participant. Probably sounds odd, but it would be nice to know what participate means. Participate in discussion, which may or may not be supportive of the activity, or participate meaning help move this project forward.
And what Alan is referring to is he's on the list of individuals from the community with their affiliations who will actively work on this study.
So I think that's a very good question to be considered as part of the discussion. And by the way, the reason you're on the list as suggestion is because you are a member of the Village Parks Committee, and the Village Parks Committee and the Water Commission have named a working collegiality, working together on this project. We've already had one joint meeting. If you would like your name taken off that list after the draft is considered, certainly you're take it off.
Depends on what the definition of participant is, whether I want it to remain on there or be taken off.
And does it meet your need that we will consider that question as part of the deliberation tonight?
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? No?
I think we need to ask our guests tonight, Lynette Claudin and Aaron Moore, because we're treading in waters that we're not familiar with. Period. They're the ones who will help us through this. So let's get the information from them. They'll answer the question for participating. Sure. And that's why we're here. Get the answers. We've gathered them. Let's get moving on it. We're treading in water we're not familiar with, so it's sink or swim.
Kim?
I'm just curious, I know we're trying to do a feasibility study, but where we're trying to do the feasibility study, applying for this grant, if we don't have a location yet. Is it feasibility?
Yeah, this question, Aaron, is here to answer tonight as part of it. We conveyed that question to Aaron, describe where in the proposal for the engineering study, consideration of various alternatives for the location occurs.
Have the individual been contacted as a potential to
No,
go move
that
forward with
that would be
feasibility?
part of it. That would be a step in the process of the engineering services agreement. And we won't even start the engineering services agreement until we get it.
So the fund wasted.
It works in the following way, and you're our town treasurer, and you have to be concerned about funding. And so the questions we heard at the emergency meeting. One, do we have to execute the engineering services agreement? That is, have a signed contract and tie and bond in order to proceed with the application. That was a question that was raised by the town administrator, rightly so. And the answer is we do not. The application, I'll get to your second question in just a minute. We do not have to have an executed signed agreement, tie and bond in order to proceed with the application. Okay, and we do not, that means that we will not sign the agreement with Titebond and begin working on the engineering study contract until we have actually received the funding from the state. And I'm gonna make one more point. The way the proposal is written is in various phases. There's a 30% phase. In the 30% phase is the consideration of the location. If we are unable to find a location to have locate the leach field for the wastewater management system, if we are unable to confirm a location, we stop the project there. We pay Time Bond for the time they have spent getting to that point, and we have the engineering grant funds to pay Time Bond at no cost, and I know that's your concern, at no cost
But
to
what
the
I'm
town.
concerned about is they're allocating this 43,600 out of a big pot of grants that this may not even go forward, but they're not allowing 43,000 to another town that could use it, that knows they've got a location. We don't even know if they have a location yet.
Well, if we will not know if there's a location before we move forward, Kim, because that requires all kinds of due diligence about the various proposed sites. Plus, we want to consider other sites that people may have in mind.
By asking, that's not really indulging too much by asking them, can you put a leach field?
I think that Lynette, and I think your questions are very good. And if we get on with this meeting and we can have Lynette and Aaron address your question as a subject matter expert, I hope that will be helpful to you, Aaron. Would it? Thank you.
Do we need a town vote in order to use the town park?
We're gonna need a town vote, regardless, John. And at the end of the day, nothing goes to this project without a town vote.
Well, that would be one of the first steps to do.
Well, I think that's a very good suggestion, and the issue with considering taking that to a town vote sooner than the rest of the project, I think would be a matter of being able to present the town with the facts of the matter. You know, the town park has not even been, it passed one simple test, and that was the PERC test. But there are numbers of other due diligence. The questions that have been raised to us have to be researched. The springs that are underneath the village park, the cisterns that exist in the village park, the deed to the property, all of these things have to be researched as part of the engineering services agreement. And that due diligence will be done. And if the town wants to vote up or down, whether we use the village park or take it out of consideration, that is the way this town is governed. At the end of the day, by town vote. So I would answer your question at this point, yes, but I think we have no information right now to guide the town about whether to vote yes or no. And we would have that information if we allow ourselves to do due diligence.
I asked the select board that basically you put because John stated it, I would talk to him, that you put the cart so far in front of a horse that's in another state, that maybe we should take this whole project and bring it to the town first, before we waste all these hours and money and applications. We should bring this to the town now as a project, not as an individual here, individual there, because I know from my research, this will be shot down so fast. that this will-
What do you, well, Mr. Chair, there is a motion on the table.
Stop. That, we have a motion that we need to deal with, okay? All these questions about, whether we should go forward or not go forward, can be much better addressed at the July 6th meeting, which we actually have on the agenda. Which is after the 1st of July.
That's correct.
But the reason for this special meeting
That's
was
correct.
to approve the application to be submitted before, on July, or before, or on or before July first.
No, the agenda clearly states, the agenda we adopted for this meeting clearly states, discuss and act, decline to act, we approve the applications or not. My words and says to consider the application. I
The agenda says discuss and act.
act, staff, decline to
And
act.
approve the application for financial assistance.
So it gave us a choice, the agenda gave us a choice. John, did that answer your question?
Not really, I agree with Chancellor, that you've got the way, but you're way ahead of things. You want to ask the town people their opinion, what should be out there or not, before you spend money and time and all this.
Okay,
We
so,
have- The motion on the floor is to, Bill, will you read the motion, please?
To continue with the special meeting to gather facts from experts here and members of the and and we can then consider the draft of the application, period.
Okay, so I'd like to call the question. And all in favor of the motion?
You haven't got a second, good here.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
We did.
Sue Allen seconded.
Just a matter
It
of.
was all amended.
no, I think, to my knowledge, I just restated it for the town administrator.
I think you should ask Sue to redo her second.
Second.
So all in favor of the motion? Let's do this as a roll vote here, so we know. Sue Allen?
Yes.
Ron?
No.
No.
Yes.
Okay, so 3-1, we proceed.
Okay. So it's going to be over now to Matt.
Sure, go ahead, Matt. I would
Yeah.
ask you to come up here.
Thank the select board for holding this meeting. I thought the potential meeting to gather more information. As I said, we're trading water that we're not familiar with. That's what we want where we need help. Here's a thought that the next body is the state of Vermont. Chief Pollution Control Engineer, Water Investment Division. For Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation. Actually, it's
Matt, just a minute. Can you not hear?
No,
Yeah. So,
You've got to speak like this. You've got to put it right in your mouth. There you go. Yes, just like that.
is it a problem for Matt not to be listening you a little bit? Would that be helpful? Because we need to. Okay, just checking. I can see your hands, he can't.
I think we should just allow Lynn, the state of Vermont, bringing up the funding and the Aaron, thank you both for attending us tonight. And Aaron is the chief engineer on this project. She can explain this whole feasibility study. And with that, I guess we'll let Lynn perhaps go first. I'd like to thank all of you for coming. We've held a lot of meetings that no one has attended. We've had water commission meetings, we've had select board meetings, and it only took let the bees out of the basket to get you out here. So thanks. Thanks for coming.
Well, go ahead. Matt, I guess, is that who's going to speak now? Matt, is that who's? Okay,
Hello,
go ahead.
my name's Lynette Cladone. I'm here to answer any questions that you guys might have tonight on the application or the process. So it'd be helpful to me to understand what specific questions you might have tonight.
And I'll just quickly jump on after Lynette and introduce myself. I'm Erin Moore from Ty and Bond. I'm watching myself and Lynette and Mr. Wallace lean into our machines. So please understand, sometimes you're very, very clear and other times we are hanging on every word in attempt to understand what's being said. So please, we're trying so hard here remotely, but it is really very, very challenging sometimes. So I hear my name sometimes. I know we all are going to do our best to answer the questions given, but if you could be patient with us as well as we're trying to clearly understand.
Lynette, I'll kick things off. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Would you kindly share with all of us the importance of the July 1st due date for the submission of the application? And then would you help us understand what needs to be filed by July 1st? And then would you help us understand the timing of the funding that we can expect to actually receive in the town to pay the bill? If you could start just by answering those 3 questions, I think that would be a big help.
Sure. With the Engineering Planning Advance program, last year is the first year that the program was able to use and appropriate, in fact, basically award all of the money that the program had to award, which is really exciting for us. So with the villages that I've been working with, I've been telling them all that the very first day that we can take action on the next round of applications is July 1st, because that is the start of the state fiscal year. And prior to that, we're not allowed to make decisions on money that hasn't been approved by the legislature. So that's where the July 1st date comes from. There are a number of villages that are pursuing wastewater studies, and the studies are becoming increasingly competitive. The Engineering Planning Advance can only be used for planning. There's other funding opportunities that can be used towards design. And then we have a goal of trying to get as many projects ready to use the ARPA stimulus money that the legislature has appropriated. So the program is getting increasingly competitive, which is exciting, but also a little scary because there's a lot of villages that have uncertainty like yours.
Before you move on to business, Sue Allen, could I ask you a question about that? Do you consider the applications as you receive them, or are they based more on quality of the application regardless of what order it came in?
No, the money is administered on a first come, first served basis. So we currently have 1 application that is waiting, and then we're hoping to get as many applications as possible and to use up all the money that is available. Once the application is made, I have to put in to the department to get a contract writer on board to write that contract with you. That is a 3-month process to be able to get that person on board to write the contract. I know that seems really slow, and it is really slow, but with the effects of COVID on the workload in the department, nearly all of the grants and contracts got slowed down. It needed to be written, and this is the best way that they have to move forward with them. So by applying as soon as possible, that money can be released as soon as possible through that agreement process. Suzanne, did I answer all of your questions?
So Lynette, you certainly answered the question about July 1 and its importance. It's first come, first served, and highly competitive. The second question is, what information needs to be included in the filing? Now, it's not as though members of the commission don't know the answer to this question. But what we're trying to do is hear it from you as the person at the state level who knows these things. So if you would kindly just explain what needs to be included in the filing of the application, hopefully as close to July 1 as we can.
So the application itself is a relatively simple form and it does ask for a couple attachments. And I saw the draft of what you'd sent. We like to see at least one coordinator listed and that some thought has been given to the people who will be asked to encourage and participate in the study. But that doesn't weigh into whether or not we will award the funding. It's really a question of where you are in this process. We do ask that eventually the tie-in bond agreement is signed, but it does not need to be submitted. I already have the copy of the tie-in bond draft agreement, but we don't have to have a signed agreement until everyone is ready to sign the department agreement, which won't be ready for 3 to 4 months.
And Lynette, while you're on the topic, would you just go through the actual steps of receiving the application from the town and giving us a notice that you have received it, and then taking that process? Would you just describe so everyone here can hear you say what those steps of the process are, please?
Yes. So when you've completed and signed the application, you send it to me. I will send you an email acknowledging the application and saying that we're starting the process to get the funding awarded. That process involves me putting in to have someone available to work on the contract, and it involves me doing some internal work to make sure that I have completed all of the necessary background information for the application.
And then what happens in 3 to 4 months?
Pardon me?
What happens in 3 to 4 months?
So in 3 to 4 months, the application is, sorry, the agreement between the Department of Environmental Conservation is drafted, and that draft agreement is sent to the town for review and comment. So you guys have the opportunity to look at that agreement and to see if you disagree with anything that might be in the agreement. And then having received the draft, we would ask that you set a date for signature for the engineering services agreement, and then we have that date put in as the start date for the contract between the town and DEC. And so then both agreements basically get executed about the same time.
Sure, go ahead. Speak loud. It's cool down.
Okay. First of all, can you tell us how much money the legislature has put into this program? What's the total amount you're working with?
So I don't know the exact figure that the legislature has done for this current budget cycle. I haven't had an opportunity to catch up with my boss on that. Typically, the legislature appropriates $3 million for what's called a pollution control grant, and the existing authorizations and statute let this program take a certain portion of that funding. Last year, we took 10% of that funding, so it was about $300,000.
The next question is who decides? Is there a board? Is it you? Is there someone we can bribe? How does it work?
What did you say? Ron?
Sorry, could you repeat the question again?
I was wondering how the decision is made and by whom.
Oh, so I make the decision when the application comes in. I review the materials. For most of the cases, I've been working with the villages right along. I think one of my first conversations with Bill Kearns was probably shortly after he started, if he's only been there 3 years, because it does seem like it was about 3 years ago. And And you know, in some cases, like in the case of Londonderry, I've been talking with them for 6 years before they applied. So in most cases, I've been working with the villages. I know what's going on in the villages and why they're interested in the study. So then I go to my director and I make sure that we have the funding available to award. He puts them on a tracking list and make sure that that money is there and to be allocated and reserved for that work. And then he also is the individual that puts the project on the list for the woman who will end up writing the draft agreement with the town.
I think I understand that you're dealing with these on a first come, first served basis. But isn't there some basis for need, i.e. a village of our size or larger with a specific problem? We have a potential problem. We don't have an existing problem. So someone with an existing problem would probably take priority, would they not? Regardless of what they put in their application.
So it doesn't really work that way. There aren't villages out there who have such terrible problems that the department would be pursuing this sort of like emergency action. And if the last couple of towns where they had a number of straight pipes that were discovered were Shoreham and Cabot, and those villages were put under order, but they initially started with a feasibility study. The straight pipes were found, and then the department put them under order, basically to make sure that they took action to fix the problems.
My last question, is there any share on part of the community, i.e. a percentage of the total cost comes to us? A lot of grants, you have to match a certain percentage of the grant.
No, so there's no match requirement with this. This is a legacy funding mechanism that the Vermont legislature created in the 60s and 70s to support the federal Clean Water Act grants that came in and built most of the collection systems and wastewater treatment plants in Vermont. So the idea at the time was that the towns just didn't have any sort of ratepayers or base or ability to repay any of the funds that were needed to develop the project enough to unlock some of those further funding doors to be able to get to the grant status from the federal government. So the way that the funding is structured is that it's an advance. So it fundamentally is a loan to the town from the state, but it is a loan where that never collects any interest until the project goes to construction. And at that time, if the project is eligible for a pollution control grant, then the advance is converted to a grant. And that is something that we can determine in this study phase, is that eligibility. So before you decided to go forward with a project or not, you would be able to make an informed decision about whether this would get converted to grant or not.
Thank you very much.
You got any other questions? Ellen?
Well,
Go ahead.
no, I was looking to see if there was your closing discussion, because certainly some of the comments made earlier, I just wanted to say I attempted to reflect very much so in the description. I think the town has tight parcels and soil that's very movable, but risk avoidance and maintenance of a wonderful, thriving little economic center that's a very strong motivation here. So I know it sounds like two of us were writing two different things at the same time, but based on that description, it sounds like the main motivation was very consistent between the two. I think that's very important to note. Just because which is a horrible situation, and unfortunately, I've worked with communities that have this case. Just because wastewater isn't rolling down, everyone's back lots, which is obviously very concerning, doesn't mean the current systems meet standards and regulations at today. So we're able to look at the parcels, the locations of the drinking water sources, the types of soils, and we know that the vast majority of the systems are non-conforming to current environmental standards. Luckily, based on the soils, we know it doesn't go to the surface. That's a horrifying situation. And again, I've worked with communities that are facing that situation when there's obvious septic failing. That's very distressing. But just because it goes away doesn't mean there's no chance of risk. And so the description of looking at the systems and how the village area is prioritized by the community and how to look at what is the feasibility of helping eliminate that risk of something happening that could impact that community and that historic village area. That's absolutely, as my understanding, what the goal is as well. So it sounds like we're really consistent on that front.
Okay, let me ask the question. I wasn't, there was no intent to stop the meeting, I was just asking you one question. So if you have any more comments, either of you, please feel free. Go ahead, Alan.
So this discussion is taking place in Grafton for probably 20 years and more about some kind of system. Several private ownerships have been contacted over the years. Would they entertain, would their land be available, etc. And when they said no, that's often as far as the discussion would go. You mentioned that the grants are done on a first come, first served basis, and there's a potential for more demand than funding to provide. When you look at your application, do you look to see if that community has endorsed the project with a vote? In this particular case, we're talking about a piece of Village Park as a potential site. Some people think that's a good idea. Many do not think it's a good idea. So you run the risk of providing funds, and at a later time, the voters would say, yeah, we heard all the facts and figures, but now we don't want to do this, and you've wasted money. So do you look to see an endorsement from the community as a further star or up the ante as far as not just, well, this one came in first, this one came in second, this one came in third, but the community's already said they would be in favor of it if we have a design system that meets code.
So the answer is both yes and no. In terms of the engineering planning advance, the decision is made based on the application and meeting the requirements of the application. There's not additional priority and ranking involved, but the engineering planning advance is just the first opportunity for funding. The next opportunity for funding is the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which is paying for the design of most of the village systems. There's currently incentives to be moving forward with those designs with what we call 100% subsidy. So that's also a loan program. but we give subsidy in the form of loan principal forgiveness. So when subsidy is 100%, that means that the loan principal is forgiven 100%. Now, currently, that cap is set at $125,000. And for the next fiscal year, it's also set for $125,000. In the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, that is also the fund that is used to fund, wastewater treatment plants and all sorts of different clean water needs around the state. So in that case, with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, we are looking at all the different priorities and rankings and whether the project's been approved, and additional points are given to those projects that have bond votes and other readiness criteria.
I'd just like to follow up on Lynette's statement, because this is extremely common scenario. Sometimes you go to communities and it's going to go behind town hall, 100%. That's the location, but it's a wetland. You need to see that with a formal analysis to understand these are our options that the committee and the engineers and everyone else they've attempted to engage in the community. All the possibilities were brought forth, vetted in a logical, followable way. So then when you're questioned, well, why didn't you include this parcel? Why didn't you look at this parcel? We can say, for instance, one parcel that was looked at very heavily in the 2001 report, it's very, very close to a surface applied discharge. So it might not be a feasible location. But to do that due diligence and be able to return back to your community members and say, no, we did look at that. We did. It's in the report. We did that analysis. And if, I'm sure none of us want to think that there's no location, but absolutely. I've been involved with there's just no location that is affordable, let's say. There's certainly maybe a parcel that would be ideal, but not cost effective. There's been other situations where the community thought they had the parcel and then someone came in and bought the parcel off someone else. And that happens, but you can say this has been raised to us as an issue. We went down the proper procedure with the Vermont DEC regulations. We followed the steps. We identified these locations. We looked at the cost. That's a huge question that often gets asked. That really weighs whether a community member is in support or not. Well, how much will it cost me? That's an important part of the analysis. And then it all concludes with a vote. So there's the real goal is to present all the options, and the motivation definitely at this point is just to get Grafton in line and the forward up in line as possible. I understand there's, without a doubt, we always have comments on our engineering proposal that we take those comments. Lynette has comments. Reflect them, edit, change how the fees are presented. That's very, very normal. And I'm positive we can make sure in the many months we have to finalize an engineering agreement, we can do so successfully. But I don't think $1 of that, I don't think wasting $1 of Vermont DEC funding with being able to return to your community and answer these questions like in a transparent and documented way.
I also don't look at an unsuccessful study as necessarily being a waste. Grafton's done several studies in the past. Those studies advance certain things, and Grafton is actually one of my favorite communities coming out of those studies, because Grafton was the only community that didn't move forward with a project, but also didn't do nothing. And so, like, when I talk to other villages, Grafton is one of my star players in terms of the villages, because you guys went forward with the pump out program and the pump out ordinance that you have. And that was just absolutely revolutionary. And, kudos to you guys for doing that, because I really hope that other communities who are faced with a similar dilemma will be as brave as you guys were.
Sure, go ahead, sir. Anita.
I think my question is for Lynette. If we are awarded the money, and it sounds like this would be, and we spend it on the study, and we decided not to move forward, do we owe any of that money back to the state?
No. So you would only owe money back if you went forward with the project and built it. If you went somewhere else and got design funding and then somehow snuck by us and built your project, I don't see that ever happening. But then you would owe the money back. And there are only interest fees and penalties at that time if you don't qualify for the PC grant and you forget to pay the department back for the project that you built.
No, if the project is voted, and it's 2 million, million and a half, whatever it becomes, the 43,000 plus gets wrapped in. And it's not that it's a massive amount, but it's a small amount compared to what it is.
Right.
It happened in 2001, when we had the first study, and it happened again in 2009, or 2006, I don't remember the exact date, with Otter Creek. And they didn't go forward, so there was no burden back.
And I think my other question is for Aaron. As you can tell, Grafton citizens are very involved in this process and this decision. And I wonder if there's a public education component to your contract. How you help us educate the public as we move forward on this project? The public will want to have a voice and speak up, I'm sure.
Well, the proposal as written, which of course we'll do some work on, it is written in the format that's consistent with Vermont DEC PER, which means Preliminary Engineering Report Standards. So we did not come up with that format. We tried to show how each step would accommodate those standards. And at each stage, there is absolutely a very critical meeting and presentation of the findings and engagement, because there's no amount of technical work on my end which can't progress this project without community support. So it's definitely on me to clearly communicate, where we are at the end of 30%, which is what are the sites we've looked at? What are some of the potentials? Describe the alternatives. The next stage, the 60% is then, comparing and contrasting alternatives, very, very important for community feedback and essential. Just can't progress. It's an essential component of it and can't progress the project. And not meaning the project to a design phase, meaning can't complete the scope at hand without community feedback at each stage. And just, I think Lynette could comment on the intention of the application. Certainly we had known that the park group already is very engaged with this. So I think the intention was simply to list the members of that committee, not specifically call anyone out as you must participate. But we're certainly hoping any large, flat piece of land kind of could look like a playing field. So I see that there is a natural, hopefully something that comes together between those two groups, because a leach field can look very much like a village square, depending on where the location is. So I'd hope there's some natural sort of chemistry and cohesiveness between those two groups, but definitely it was just intended to be a list of who's on that committee.
So, Alan, the 2001 study, which I was involved with as a selectman, went to the preliminary engineering search, just like it is now. But I left the board And the new board never took it to the step to the pen. So there was never any meeting or whatever, it was decided that it was done, let's say we had put in set funding. The 2009 or whatever the other Creek one, I believe the board started that on the water basis, for water system, but I believe the board also did not take it to the public. So regardless, if the board decided to go forward with the study, and this would be, if the board wants to continue with this, it would be the first time, which would be the third study, that it actually did go to the town, or go for the comment. I mean, I'm assuming that the board would continue to do that. You know, it might change, but this would be an interesting situation, and the town might reject it. I don't know how to say. Any other questions? If not, you might be like to move on with the meeting. I'm not quite sure what we're going to accomplish.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that everyone's had a chance to, Matt, you want to come forward, I just want to make sure as a select board member that everyone has had a chance to have Lynette answer their questions about the importance of the July 1 date, that it is, awards are made on a first come, first served basis. That all we have to turn in is draft of the time bond. We're not making any financial commitment to time bond by applying for this grant. And that the money to be awarded to us in 3 to 4 months, at the same time we choose to do so, execute the contract with time bond. There will be no work done by time bond, no invoices arriving to the town from time bond until the grant money is in hand for us to pay those. Is that pretty much clear to everybody now? Because I think that was not clear. Yeah.
Okay, when you submit this grant application and you're saying a draft to the town and bond has to accompany it?
Yeah.
So is this not giving you as a board the opportunity to go through the contract and go through paperwork to see if there's anything you'd like to tweak in it? Because now you're eligible to tweak it, which you didn't realize you could.
Well, Erin, would you like to speak to that? I think you are best answer Kim's question. Were you able to hear it?
Yeah.
No.
Okay, Kim, would you come forward and ask your question?
Kim, you want me to stay? Or-
Yes, if you're allowed.
The question Kim had was, we have a draft, which we have to submit. Okay, so when we submit this draft along with the application, that is what happens. Okay, Kim is concerned that do we have the ability to renegotiate the contract and make changes, even though it was filed as a draft. Is that right, Kim?
Yes.
So the scope, as it's written, is focused on the PER components. And certainly I understand there's commitment as far as what will be accomplished, that multiple sites will be looked at, taken into consideration. There is no preliminary comments that I've seen yet that would change our scope whatsoever as far as our intention. If we want to memorialize that, that's fine, and that's common. At this stage, we thought we would be submitting a draft, getting feedback, and then modifying it. Usually a town attorney always has something also they want to see and change. So, that was our anticipation of where we were. But the dollar value, I'm very confident. The only question that's been caught up was a question about a mounding analysis that had not been included. And then it was verified that would be part of design, would be acceptable to be part of design. But that was the only item that was of concern from a dollar value. So certainly, I'm very confident we can do what needs to be done. I have no hesitation to memorialize some comments, confirm what we're looking at. And of course, the intention is not to submit any bills until we start work. I don't think the town wants us to start work until they have a commitment from Vermont DEC for funding. So I think we're very copacetic on the schedule and when we would start work, and again, not until the town has that commitment to have funding.
One of the things that was, in the contract, there was no clause that said, if there was, if money was denied, then the contract would be null and void. So that was my concern, that if the draft gets put in, but we don't get the funds for some reason, then what happens to the contract? We're not obligated, are we? And that's not in the contract.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys must be dealing with lawyers a lot. I get emails all the time, especially, unfortunately over 2020, it was very challenging for many communities, and who said, Erin, you gotta stop. We're not doing any more work. And pretty much the email was all it took for me to stop doing any work, because I work with small communities and I know budgets are a huge concern. So we've never plowed ahead after a community has asked us not to do any work, but I completely understand whatever your experience is. If that clause would make the town comfortable, no problem. But additionally, there's really no motivation to sign our contract until you have commitment for the funding. So we are completely fine. Time bond is not going to run away. I have a feeling I will be hopefully engaged like this. And I mean engaged in a manner of reached out and communicated and get to speak to you all, and provide support in the months till we get to that point. But certainly there's no concern on my end that we are happy to wait whatever months necessary to start our work.
So, could you just, Aaron, be very clear and say that, and say, what is your position on receiving comments and further negotiation of the draft between now and closer to the time we receive the funding?
So already from the state, I've received feedback on a format they'd like to see, as far as billing, how we'd like to be billed. If there's any specific scope item we'd like to see included, specifically the format, anything. And I don't know, this is where we're getting to know each other. If you want to communicate that directly to me through Bill, if you want to communicate through Matt and Matt email me, whatever the comfortable method of doing this, I am happy and open to do that. But as select board, you get comments to me on what you would like to see addressed. We'll mark it up as a draft, showing the comments we've addressed, get it back to you, and then finalize once we're all comfortable with what's in it.
So we are not locked into the language within the draft that will be submitted with the application. There can be changes to that language.
Well, I not backpedal a bit, but if something that's not consistent, I'm trying to think of something. We just talked about a mounding analysis, which is a technical item that Lynette had said, should you consider this? And then we agreed that's more appropriate if a site is chosen during design. That's a technical analysis requiring some modeling. That's something that certainly would have time impact. But we're committing to look at multiple sites, do risk analysis and feasibility analysis on multiple sites. I have time in there for a site we have not visited yet to make sure we can do test pitting on. It's a very prescribed components to the report, and I've made sure that we can deliver on them and then be very present with you, which I think is very important here. I want to make sure, we're physically there, addressing these meetings at the deliverable points so I can in person answer questions.
Yeah, Bill?
Lynette, where does it say we send you a copy of the contract? I use the contract to answer your questions as to the purpose and to the scope. That's all you want. You don't want our copy of our contract, do you?
We actually always collect a copy of the contract with the engineer, and mostly we do that because we need to make sure all of the activities are actually eligible to be funded.
Okay, so you do need a copy of it sent with the application.
So we already have a copy that you guys had sent to us already, so we don't need it again. And you know, the actual details of that contract, you guys can work them out over the 3-month period that I'm waiting to get in line for the contract with the department. And so I already have all that, and at this point, we just need the actual application and the materials that the application asks for.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Kim, did that answer your question? I just want to make sure you're comfortable. This is your area, town responsibility. I want to make sure you're comfortable with what Aaron has described as what can happen between now and when the contract is executed, that is signed. And that wouldn't happen for 3 to 4 months. Are you comfortable with that?
I am, but is this anything, because it's such a, I know it's small to them, but kind of large to us, is that anything that our attorney should take a look at?
Sure. I think that Aaron pointed that out.
That's all.
Go ahead.
The format that we asked for is a really different format, and so before you pay the attorney to look at this contract, you should wait for Aaron to use the format that we asked for, because it is a much longer document.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It was really seen that, this application, don't have a ducks in a row along this. And there's always the next year, we're not gonna do it. We're not gonna come up with this, it's not there, right? Not. There's always next year, there's no emergency on this whole project. Let's not ram on this, it's carefully diligent. I'm sorry, you can't ram on something for 3 days, you should have done it 5 or 6 months. There's always notice.
Okay, so then, so we had a motion to continue the vote of the meeting.
Yeah.
I think we'll come to the point where we have questions. So.
What about
what do you
part of the
think
motion to
now?
consider the application?
So do you want to make a motion to that effect?
No, I think that's part of the motion, to consider, to take a look at the application, consider the application.
No.
The draft, I misspoke, to consider the draft of the application that was submitted to us.
Okay, but okay, you've been doing it, so, but, okay, so that's all been done.
Point out a couple of things in specifically, because they are questions that came up in the beginning of the discussion. And does everybody in the public have a copy of the draft of the application? Oh, I thought someone made copies. I just want to make sure that everyone is as informed about this issue.
Has no one been complaining about running the meeting as a member of the Winter Foundation?
Okay, now and I know that this is management, I'm going to say it. Not the application. This is the statute and a model for the town. Drafted by Aaron for our ease to have something to look at and start with and putting our application.
So can I, so I understand this, like, we're looking at the application and we will vote on the application on the next meeting on July 6th, is that what you're saying?
Only if you want to miss the July 1st, you say.
Well, what I'm confused is that this is a draft. Are you suggesting that we work this contract out now?
No, I am not suggesting that, Mr. Chair. I'm following through on the question that you asked about the motion and what is the next step in the meeting. And the next step in the meeting was to review the application.
Yeah, I'm not presenting that.
Well, let's see. Let's do it and see.
Well, what is there to what the application?
Okay, there were some questions that were asked. Does anybody have a okay, Alan, could you share the copy with Bob, please, so that you can see it?
I know.
Okay. So I just want you the
I have another copy of some of them.
And the select board have a copy of the draft. Okay, so, and again, I'm gonna have Aaron jump in here, I'm gonna structure it. So page one, wait, Don, did you need a copy?
Kim is making more copies. He'll be here in a second.
Okay, no, that, sorry.
Don's name on the page. Don?
Look, we're thrilled that all of you were this. Okay. So page one is pretty straightforward. It's just the town of Grafton and the place where the select board dates and sign the application. Is there any comments you want to make about page? Can you hear me? Erin, is there any comment you want to make about page one?
The only comment I'd like to make about page one is that, again, the only thing that's pertinent to the engineering contract here is the value of 43,600, which we feel very confident is we developed that fee piece by piece, looking at the requirements of item 1 through 15 of the PER. So while the engineering agreement needs to be finalized, which can be done in the upcoming 3 months, that dollar value, we are very committed to doing the work for that price, and do not anticipate for any reason that there'd be anything requested by the town or select board that would increase that price. So we feel very good that that is an appropriate fee for this study.
So in other words, the fee cannot, once we apply the 43,600, it can't go up. That's the amount for Blackpool, right, Lynette?
Should you guys run into some reason and need to file an amendment and we have money available, then we would consider the amendment.
Okay.
But that would be considering something unforeseen at this point.
And Lynette, I'm sorry, Aaron, while we're on the topic of the 43.6, would you please explain to people the phasing and how the funding kicks in at each 30, 60, 90 phase?
Well, in the draft proposal, we included a breakdown of the amount, the fee that we'd anticipate at each phase, from project initiation through each phase. Certainly, again, from a building build perspective, that can be done hourly. But I think it's important to understand about the anticipated fee per each phase. But there's, as far as how that's billed and how that relates, I'm sure, there's good methodologies to do that everyone will be comfortable with.
All right, so now on page 2, are there any comments you want to make about page 2? Aaron?
From my perspective, this is pretty standard town information. Of course, if anyone had, there's a bad address or phone number, this would be the time to speak up. But also the wastewater committee, I'm sure Matt could comment on the coordinators and that they are the appropriate coordinators from the wastewater committee.
My question is to the coordinators. Matt, you have time to serve here?
Depends where we go tonight.
Huh?
It depends on where we go tonight.
No, if the application is submitted, the
Yeah.
question is, do you have the time?
Yes.
I know in one of your emails, you all work for a living here, so I just want to make sure that you are committed, you can do it.
I will work with the engineers.
Okay.
Correct.
And Meg, are you committed also, time-wise?
Work with the engineers, no. But to support the commission, yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I do think that probably the select board would need to have a motion to name Bill as the authorized representative. That's just a holding place until we have a motion and pass and is the authorized.
I believe that he was asked to sign it at one point in time, so I think I was only maybe.
Okay,
My name is misspelled.
I know, yeah, sorry about that. So, okay, and then section 3, section 3, Aaron, would you just, everybody, this is the section that's headed section 3A purpose. We're not going to go through this line by line, but Bill, this is pretty much Aaron's version of the document you wrote answering the questions in section 3. So Aaron, would you just describe to us what you've got in here?
You know, Suzanne, this is pretty quick. Am I legible? Do I sound good to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, section 3, purpose. That's the reasons the community wishes to investigate wastewater problems, the feasibility of solutions to them, consider including surfacing sewage, again, luckily not an issue, water pollution, contamination of drinking water supplies, and development constraints. So this is the response. We've got Grafton is one of 170 villages in Vermont without public water or wastewater systems, and one of more than 200 without public wastewater service. In 2019, the commission began revisiting the potential for a community wastewater solution in the village to present relevant information on the critical issue to public health, environmental health, and economic health. The most recent effort to determine the wastewater feasibility, as we know, 2001, during which it was determined that Grafton was impacted by the following conditions. And this is what I was referring to earlier. Small parcels with dense development, so that do not allow for development which conforms to the current state wastewater and drinking water supply regulations. And that has not changed since 2001. Has the potential to cause pollution of existing wells. Grafton generally has shallow wells, which are more easily contaminated by groundwater pollutants. Highly permeable soils, which allow groundwater to travel quickly through soil, potentially reaching well or stream before reaching the appropriate level of remediation. And so this is what we were saying. If it doesn't go up to the surface, just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't causing a potential problem somewhere. And old and undersized septic systems that don't conform to current design standards and may not function adequately. So those are issues that were identified in 2001 and continue to be concerns for the village center. So in addition to those concerns, the town's committed to preserving the economic viability of their historic village center. Community wastewater service would protect the thriving yet fragile economic center from drinking water and environmental contamination concerns. So when I was listening, I was thinking that this reflects very much so my understanding of the motivation here as well. And we just also want to acknowledge in this section of this application that the commission, just like Lynette said, has worked hard to pursue additional data and organized a community drinking water sampling and survey event to determine if failing septic systems had impacted quality of drinking water in the village. And in late 2020, completed a successful wastewater survey with 90% of the high priority, high risk properties returned a completed survey, which is a pretty fantastic response rate. So one important finding of the survey, 25% of the septic systems were over 40 years old. So that's beyond service life. And an additional 28% were more than 20 years old. And this work was also a very successful way to raise awareness in the town and engage that this is an issue that really needs continued community engagement. So that's a summary with some commentary of that first comment. So the second part is the description of the project and specifically asks, what does the community want to have studied? What questions does it want to have answered? What are possible solutions to be investigated? And particularly, what costs is addressed? And there is a little history here, but the dollar value of the 2001 study and the 111 homes that were included with that produced a $4 million cost. And the village said it's too much. The town said it's too much and we're not going to pursue it. So the project did not proceed. So the goal of this engineering, preliminary engineering report, again, the structure is so it's in compliance with Vermont DEC standards, which allows it to be funded should the project go ahead towards that design and construction phase. You've got a document that's now in the specified format that's required by funding agencies. So that's really important. Does it take a little more dollar value from a preliminary engineering perspective to hit these 30 and 60 and 90% and regulatory feedback? And yes, but now you've got a document that's in the format that's required by funding agencies, which is really important. And that's why it's structured like this. And look at a smaller scale solution, really focused at high priority lots in the village center. Identify again these risk factors, shallow wells, soil types, aged systems, and then investigate service area. So who would you serve? Potential treatment and disposal locations, the style of collection system, and the use of treatment technologies. Is that appropriate? If so, which technology would be used? What would be recommended? And an update of opinion of project cost, because that's really the most common question, that I understand, that I get is how much is going to cost me? Because my feeling about supporting the project changes drastically depending on the cost and the cost impact. So the overall feasibility for a potential decentralized wastewater system. And in section 3, the third is the location map. This is the previous map, if that's been attached to everyone's printout and document, which is pretty much a topo map with a circle around the village center. So that's a talk through of section 3.
To be clear, the location is essentially the village in the town of Grafton. It does not specify a location for the beach field in this section. Right, Aaron? There's no specification of the location of any beach field in section C. It is strictly a topographical map of the village of Grafton. Is that right, Aaron?
With a big circle around it. I mean, I'd be happy to show it if I could share my screen, but it's just a topo map with this is our study area. It's not asking about disposal or treatment locations. It's saying what's our study area.
Okay. Are there any questions for Aaron about sections 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll get to section 4, which I was.
Why don't you proceed?
Okay. So now then. Oh, I have to do it. It's, no, it's executive for labeled community project participants. Now, what we did here, Aaron, used the list of community groups and organizations that will, if they so choose, participate in the study. And any group that does not wish to do this can be taken out of the application. But essentially, these are groups that in some way, shape, or form have already been part of the project and are usually included in the distribution lists that are sent by the Water Commission and the town administrator to inform people. And they are the select board, the wastewater study commission, the village park committee, the Wyndham Foundation, who is represented here tonight, the Visit Grafton Vermont organization, which is our Chamber of Commerce, the Grafton Improvement Association, because Don has been attending these meetings and he's asked very good questions, the Town of Grafton Planning Commission, which is included in most of the email distributions regarding this project, and the town health officer is an option. Our representative of any of these organizations, would you like for us to take your name off this list?
I have to bring that to the trustees, I can't.
Okay. Okay, so we'll take off the Grafton Improvement Association.
I didn't
But
think they'd gone, but just that it hasn't been.
Right. No, I understand. We can put you back on.
Anthony, another question. I'm sorry, but unless you approach every one of these and get a letter from them, you cannot put your name to a document without actually having an express letter legally. You are legally putting people's names to a document without them any kind of, I mean, well, you're opening a can of worms with huge risks.
So let's just review this list one more.
Well, I think Ken has a very good point, and that's what I was trying to address early on in the meeting. It's all well to surmise that maybe these names here want to proceed, but I believe you need to have a firm commitment before I would be willing to send this application to the state for funding.
Al?
I think commitment gets back to what is participate. I asked earlier, what does it mean to participate? If that
Okay,
means a positive rah rah, let's go do it, not everybody's gonna want to participate. If participate means express concerns and issues that they feel need to be resolved, or are issued so strongly that they don't think it's the appropriate place. If that's participation, I think the list is going to be much longer.
Well, I think that if you take Alan's comment, and you take Ken's comment, if you're going to approach these organizations or these people, then there should be a letter or a directive of what you expect them to do. And then they would make their decision based on what you want them to participate, or how you want them to participate.
So Lynette, I think it's everyone's understanding that the engaging different community organizations is for positive feedback, or, and that's not even the right term, that we all look at these projects with a different priority set and different view. So the interpretation of that is not, we're looking for support members, we're looking for important community organizations that are going to provide critical feedback. That's, no one needs yes men. That's probably a dated term. But we need critical feedback and people willing to provide comments and thoughts on positive and negative things. So that's definitely the intent there. Is that your understanding as well, Lynette?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Agree, but I think you have to, whether the person is in favor or against the project, I think you have to give them the opportunity to say they would like to be part of it. I don't disagree. You can't have all yes men, you gotta have people who are gonna contribute. But you need to ask them, and I don't think you did that.
Mr. Chair, this is a draft. We can take the names of the communities in order to achieve larger good, which is to submit this application, if we agree to it, by the July 1st due date. We can take off any names. This is a draft. This is not a required list. We can take off the name, any organizations that are not here. We are the Grafton Select Board. The Wastewater Study Commission is a commission of the Select Board. So it's the Village Park Committee and the Wind Foundation represented here. Why would we hold up this entire application for that reason?
Well, I don't agree. I think that, the organizations listed here should have been contacted. And you're not submitting this as a draft, you're actually going to sign this.
No, we can make the changes. That's why it's a draft, Joe. We can make changes.
Well, I'm a little confused as to what are we doing, well, are we going to sign this thing tonight, or are we going to do it another day? I'm confused.
We could make this really simple.
What?
One word will make this very simple. List the community groups and organizations that will be asked to participate.
Lynette, could we do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Does that meet everybody's need then?
That changes the whole thing, yes.
Okay. Al, thank you. would you state your suggestion again, please?
List the community groups and organizations that will be asked to participate in this.
Yes.
And that should apply to B as well.
Yes.
Bill, did you have a question?
No, I just, that's what Lynette said. This page could be blank, doesn't matter. That's what Lynette said at the beginning, so either way, yeah, same thing.
And then, so that was a great discussion, and thank you for that. And then the first and second coordinator, I think we've already gotten agreement. This is, public outreach, Meg, I think is your area on the commission, your Chris's area on the commission. Yes.
Okay, so we've been here for almost 2 hours and it's hot as heck. So how do we want to end the meeting?
So are there any other concerns by members of the select board on the, on your questions that you came into this meeting with about, where we are in the project and about that? John, how are you doing? No further questions?
I'm not concerned.
No concerns? You're good? So Joe, how are you feeling?
I'm okay,
Okay. So,
but I'm not sure, I'm confused, I still don't understand. Do you want to make a motion to decide this application is submitted by July 1 tonight? Is that what you're asking?
I just want to get a sense of, do we need to sleep on this and do this tomorrow?
No, we're not going to have to go meet to see what's going to be happening today, what's going to happen on July 6th or next year.
So then and your public comment has been heard.
I'm not active
And-
on
and
it.
certain
Not
constituents-
Please.
May I ask a question of Lynette? Lynette, if we were to file our application on July 7th, do you expect that there will be too many ahead of us in the queue? Is your phone going to ring off the hook starting July 1? Or will we have a pretty good chance of still being near the top of the queue if we waited a week?
It's really not possible for me to know exactly how many villages will apply and when.
I know that for the payroll protection plan, it was on a first come, first served basis. And the members of the foundation were ready to hit the send button at 8 a.m. on the day that was due. But I mean, do we feel that I'm happy to make a motion that we
Why don't you make a motion? Maybe?
go ahead and sign it tonight. I feel as though we really vetted gathering the information and also answering the questions about the application.
Would you like to
So
make a
I would like to make a motion that we, as a select board, date and sign this application tonight so that it can be submitted before July 1.
As amended.
As amended, thank you, yes, as amended.
We have a second.
Second.
Okay, so we got the motion, Bill?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I don't like the motion, but because it's not worded correctly, that you make a motion as it says in the application in accord with provisions of Title 24 VSA Chapter 120 subject, you hereby makes an application to the Vermont Department of Environmental Conservation, and that you will then sign that. But before we go forward with that, I want to know so that I'm not blamed for sitting on the thing and not doing anything for 2 weeks, who is going to amend it and send it to us to sign? That's all I want to know.
My question is that if this is approved tonight by the board, then Bill's comment is right on, and it's who is going to make the amendment. It has to be given to Bill to make the changes, and then it'll be left on the selectmen's table to be signed prior to July 1. But who's going to make the amendments?
Darren, would you be willing to make the amendments to the organization if they're approved that? And
I
then-
know we've all been here for a bit, but can we just talk already? I think section 4A, we discussed that the following organizations will be asked to participate. How did we want to handle B?
The same way.
Same,
So
same
they
thing. Is that correct?
actively participate.
Yes, asked
Okay.
to actively work.
They will be asked to actively work on this stuff.
Okay, but A is the following organizations will be asked to participate. B is the following individuals will be asked to actively work on the project. Perfect. Okay, great.
That's the only
And I
amendment.
think that's the only amendment. And since I think this needs to be presented to Bill, it's according to the process from the water commission. So if you would submit those edits to those amended document to Matt, and then Matt gets it to the town administrator, and then the town administrator would put the unsigned document on the table in the back, in the select board office, and we would sign it, before July 1.
One caveat to that is that when the document is amended, it'll be sent to, whether it's sent to Matt Ciano or it needs to go to Bill Burns, so he can get it to the select board prior to signing, so we have an opportunity to review it, and not review it at the same time as signing.
Okay, good.
And
I heard someone say their name was misspelled.
Yeah, that's me, Aaron. Bill Kearns, it's Kearns.
Oh my gosh, Bill. Holy cow.
Aaron, just hang on a second. Can, please, I'll get short, we won't be on that.
We don't know. Also, I'd like to look at your section you need to change this 3A and B. As a member of this community for now 43 years, you actually need to describe the reasons the community wishes to investigate the community as well. I think most of the people here would agree with you. No one's been asked. We are the community. Nobody's been asked if we, for a portion of it, we need to change this. I'm part of the community, they're all part of the community. Nobody's come to us and said, I'm sorry, this is not right.
So what are you suggesting we change where?
Section 3, A and B, will you describe the reason the community wishes? We are the community. Nobody's asked me. Have they asked you, Don?
No.
No, nobody's asked anyone.
A vote would ask the community.
Exactly. A vote would ask the community.
Okay.
Okay, so had,
How would you like to see that change?
I think in this case, we were thinking that the actions of the select board and the water commission were representing, as your legislative body were representing. But I understand your point that.
I think you only have to change community, the select board and the wastewater community commission, which is to investigate the wastewater project.
Okay.
Understood.
Well, I think you should say for the benefit of the town of Grafton.
And the same thing for, Pete. There was another hand up there. Alan, did you have something?
Well, almost sorry, but I think you should add, historical society to this. There's a lot of history, you can go with Clark, and I think they ought to have a chance to participate.
Good suggestion.
Yeah. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, I also would, on B there, individual community with affiliations. I know there's some of the businesses like MKT and some of the other businesses, but they might want to participate as well, because they could be affected by whatever it's done.
How about the Rivers Community Store?
Well, that's fine, that's, and that too, but, well, it's no harm, because we're asking, we're not suggesting, we're asking them, so at least they, if they want to, they can, if they don't, that's fine. But I think the ability, to have as many people, I think, Aaron suggested that, the more the better.
Yeah.
And if you get more, we can't have just everybody saying yes, because then that's not going to.
Okay, so and I think there are two all captured those suggestions.
Okay, so let me understand.
Motion.
Let me understand before we go further. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We'll make some further amendments. So my suggestion, I'm not sure if it's Aaron or if it's Lynette, but somebody needs to make the changes, get it to Bill Kearns, and that's the end, and let them look at it and make sure that the changes are being done according to the minutes of the meeting. And once that is determined, then let it be sent to, whether Matt does it or Bill does it or both of them, and send it to them, we'll correct the draft, and then that goes to the select board, and then we will sign that before July 1, just like it's done with any warrants or any other form of the application. But before we sign anything, let's make sure that we review the draft and make sure that they correspond with what we discussed here today.
I think that sounds great.
I don't want any change to B, section 3B. I don't know how you would change it. You might say if someone in the community knows, but the fact is, it's in what we want to be investigated is everything that's in the proposed contract that Aaron wrote. So I don't know how you want to change
Here,
that. I don't think. it needs to be.
3B, the Select Board and Water Wastewater Study Commission for the benefit of the town of Grafton wishes to study several aspects of wastewater feasibility. That's the initial statement, and then goes into the different things to be studied. Similarly, 3A, the Select Board and Water Wastewater Study Commission for the benefit of the town of Grafton wishes to investigate wastewater system feasibility, and then continues with the the text as is.
Mr. Chair, that should be the motion. I'm not going to write it down. She's already typed it, so I'm going to get it from her.
Bill, Aaron's going to retype this thing, send it to you and Matt to make sure that it's
Yeah.
accurate. And if it's not, you contact them to redo it, and then send it to the board, and if the board feels that it's still not correct, then you send it back for further corrections before it gets.
Correct.
That's how I see it. Okay?
I'll work with Aaron tomorrow morning, first thing. We'll go over it.
Okay,
Okay, Aaron.
but make sure that Bill gets a copy, because we have to make sure that he reflects
Yep.
what's going on in the minutes.
I'll talk to Bill.
I don't know if Bill's talking to me anymore, if I missed a A in his name. Did everyone see me turn redder?
Well, you see
Hang
what
my
happens,
head in
Aaron?
shame. I know.
I just want to make sure that, that I said in the motion by, July 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor. Let's do a roll call vote. Okay, all in favor of signing the agreement, and I ask for the motion with the changes that we discussed. So Al, we'll start with me.
Aye.
Don?
No.
Don says no. Joe says no.
Aye. Aye.
Motion is passed, so we will continue to rewrite the agreement. And that's all this, be notified by the town administrator that the document that we sign, sign it, and then we'll go forward with. Then we have on the July 6th meeting, we have further discussion of the wastewater and other concerns that we need to address. Okay? Motion to adjourn, please. All in favor, say aye. Oh, okay, thank you.
Thanks so much for having.
Thank you, Lynette. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you for having
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, everybody.
I need to shut off the recording. I need to shut off the recording. Just wait. Okay.
So, question for you, Mr.
Huh?
So, obviously, Aaron and the girl were talking about this. When she was talking about they would stop work at any time, she's talking about the actual project, though, not the feasibility study.
Feasibility stuff.
She'll stop that. So if they, in the first 3 days, they can't find, and it doesn't sound like it was their first priority to look for a site, but in the first 3 days, if they don't find any sites to use this for the system, the state still pays for 30%.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'll,
This is all the stuff they've done at 30%.
this makes perfect sense if you want to make some money, because why wouldn't you start out with finding a site that you actually can use it? These, there's nothing here looking, none of these describe finding the actual site.
Did you leave the meeting?
Yeah, it's all off.
Well, my misreading is, where is the one that's, where are they finding the site?
Confirmation, needs analysis, wastewater flow development, treatment, disposal,
Okay,
system, location,
okay,
alternatives.
so that's, okay. So that at least is in the first 30%.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's what I was concerned, like they weren't gonna find the site first. That's where our problem's gonna be. My second problem's gonna be that nobody's gonna vote, who's gonna vote.
Well, the other thing is, I don't think they know that you have a permit
Oh,
on
yeah.
all those properties. That's something you gotta, you need to bring up on Monday. It's one of the questions I would, yeah, is, you guys know, already, Aaron. It's the same as the one up there, so Montese, I understand, isn't saying no to the world, but it's saying.
Well, what's it gonna do to me? It's gonna restrict my, obviously, it's gonna happen if they just have. I'm not gonna drive my truck down and spread waste.
So what's Wyndham gonna do with the water? I know they pay you.
Right, well,
Are you obliged to get rid of it?
yeah, kind of, me and the foundation, me and the foundation, both permitted. I own the truck and I'm responsible for getting rid of the rest.
Okay.
But when she's coming, when the foundation and myself would want to lose any of our areas.
So,
Real hard.
so if you lose areas,
Well, we got
Then you're gonna go
extra
back-
right
then-
now, but it doesn't mean that we want to give it up.
okay, but if you do that, is that on you or is that on the foundation? In other words,
Well,
are
that's
you
why
the
we're talking.
bunch
That's why we are
guarantee?
right now. Yeah, you just start dumping in the river, it goes. Wait, the computer's off.
It's off.
I don't know.
Lydia.
No, it'll come up for sure. And I don't want to put a monkey wrench in my, we just barely got our permits